who's off camera, I know some people have some technical issues, but if there's any way to turn your camera on, I would love to see your actual charming faces on this. It just makes it so much more, it's easier to connect with a face than a typed name across the screen.
I completely agree. And there's a reason why we have Zoom calls instead of conference calls.
Yeah.
Oh, the days of conference call board meetings. Oh, gosh.
Oh, those were awful.
They really were.
I've been up all night, so that ain't happening. I haven't even brushed my hair yet, and I've been in several other Zoom meetings this morning. So
no worries.
Please bear with I got bad head. So,
you know, this is what the amoeba community is like, and you can come with your bedhead, and
thank you
here if you want to, or you can remain by voice only with your bedhead. We
and my jammy
have you either way,
and my jammy bottoms.
There you go.
You know, in Zoom, nobody knows what's happening below you. That much.
It's true.
Good for a chuckle.
We're not asking who's wearing bunny slippers, so you're good to go.
Thank you.
Well, thanks everybody for being here. We'll just jump in with a few of our usual things. I'm Jennifer Rubenstein. I'm the director of the Louisville Independent Business Alliance and have been involved with Amoeba for many, many years. Had served on the board and continue serving through this Leaders of Local Roundtable or Local Leaders Roundtable, amongst other things. So I've put in the chat there if you need to reach me during or after, you know, my contact information. And in a minute here, we'll ask all of you to just introduce yourself really quickly. This is our local leaders roundtable. I see a lot of familiar faces, a couple new folks as well. So I also will be introducing shortly my partner in crime here, Rebecca Moisson, formerly of the Austin IVA and now an independent agent, doing many things, and she can talk to that here in a minute. And also involved and on the board of Amoeba. So Amoeba is the American Independent Business Alliance. If you're here, you probably got our newsletter or got it forwarded to you. We're having these calls as a way for our organizations across the country to connect. It's one of the benefits that we offer to our members, and we have opened it up for people to give it a try, to get to know Amoeba better. If you're not a member yet, obviously we would love to have you. We'll learn a little bit more about everybody when we do our introductions. Just a little bit about these calls. We kind of rotate the subjects, but we always have them the second Thursday of every month. The session today is called a nuts and bolts, where we kind of get into some how-to and usually have kind of somebody from outside our organizations come to speak. And that will be Ed Cordes. He is with the Center for Nonprofit Excellence, and he'll be joining us. He had a conflict, but he's going to come on at about 1:30. So Rebecca and I were also planning to speak a little bit about our experiences, and we welcome you to chime in. And then we'll have his kind of like more 1,000-foot view come in at 1:30. So we also have the what's going on with Amoeba type of call, so you can stay up to date on what those initiatives are and everything. It's kind of easy to get down in the weeds with our own organizations and forget what's available to us in this kind of larger community. So that's kind of the idea behind those, along with the Hive, our third type of call, which is more of just an informal networking where we can riff off each other and connect and converse about whatever topics are important to us that day. So we'll do a quick round of intros here. If everybody would give their name and position and their organization name, if you have one, and kind of maybe where you are, if it isn't obvious from your name. Obviously, Louisville Independent Business Alliance, there is a Louisville in Colorado, but I'm here in Louisville, Kentucky. And the rest of you can let us know kind of where you are, and I guess maybe, you know, how long your organization's been around type of thing, so we can have an idea of all of our various stages of board development and committee development. So with that, I will start, let's see, going around my screen. Lauren Haggerty, I'll put you up first.
Hi there, great to see everyone. Lauren Haggerty with Local First in La Plata County, but we're located in Durango, Colorado, and I am the Policy and Programs Director. And Local First has been around since about 2010.
Awesome. Thanks for being here, Lauren. Gaynell, or I'm sorry, I'm mispronouncing your name, I think.
Gaynell.
Gaynell.
That's fine. Thank you. Old
Awesome.
Celtic, over 1,000 years old name.
Wonderful.
I probably look it too. However, I've created a program I've named Vivify Vero. It's Vivify means bring to life. I'm in Vero Beach, Florida. Sunny and rainy right now. So this program is, I'm hoping to have an impact on the local economy
Awesome.
by, of course, presenting amoeba programs to our local government and to our locals, practice them. So
Perfect.
Wonderful.
We'd love to hear it.
yeah, just a marketing company.
Nice.
Thanks.
Let's see, Pat Fowler.
I'm Pat Fowler, owner of Village Square Booksellers in Bellows Falls, Vermont. Obviously a member of the American Booksellers Association, where I found out about you guys. And I'm on our Bellows Falls Downtown Development Alliance board. I'm the treasurer, and I run the Shop Local committee, the promotions committee, and we do a Shop Local program with little cards and have people fill out the cards and hand them in and give out prizes and stuff. So I'm always looking for new ideas.
Awesome.
Great.
We have lots of those. Leslie Schrag.
I am Leslie Schrag. I'm from Kingman County Economic Development, which is in Kansas. It's about 35 miles west of Wichita, if you know where that is. Our county has about 7,000 people in it, and I'm situated in the county seat of Kingman, and most of our businesses are independent businesses. So,
Excellent. Kathleen.
Hey all, Kathleen Rourke. I'm the engagement director for Field First Economy. We have the Local First West Michigan brand underneath our organization, where we support, of course, locally owned businesses. We've been around for 20-ish years. I've been here for 4 of those. So I'm newer to our board and program committee, and just looking forward to talking a little bit more about those.
Awesome. Wolf.
Wolf Nagley. I'm with the Foundation for Global Sustainability in Knoxville, Tennessee. I'm a president, and the organization was formed in 1988 in Kentucky and has been in Knoxville, based in Knoxville for about 30 years now. And about 20 years ago, one of our board members' students developed a website called knoxgreen.biz. And they were kind of promoting local businesses, but it didn't really catch on, and nobody volunteered to maintain it. So, but we still have the domain names, also localgreen.biz, and we have now a campaign for more worldwide solidarity. And one of the things is making communities more resilient, and buying local has always been one of our issues that we wanted to support and have not very efficiently, but now we are restarting that kind of a drive.
Awesome.
Fabulous.
Thank you. Ariana.
Hi, I'm sorry I'm not able to do video right now, but I am the owner of Country Bookshelf, which is an independent bookstore in Bozeman, Montana. So hi, Pat, fellow bookseller. And I'm on the board of the Pacific Northwest Booksellers Association, and I'm also on the board of the Downtown Bozeman Association, which are both organizations.
Well, thanks so much for being here. Lydia. Oh, Lydia says her mic and video aren't connected. Lydia Hess, director of the Logan County Chamber in Bellefontaine, Ohio. Thanks for being here, Lydia. Let's see, Paige Curtis.
Hi, everyone. Excited to be here. I'm Paige. I'm the Culture and Communications Manager at the Boston Ujima Project, so based in Boston. We do solidarity economy work up there, and we are fiscally sponsored by another organization, so don't have our own board just yet, but are thinking about creating one. Glad to be here.
Awesome. Excellent. Stephanie.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Melnick. I apologize. I had no idea what to expect from this call, so here I am. I'm here because I am the brand new president of the Local First Milwaukee chapter, but I also have my own business. I'm a lawyer in Milwaukee, run my own firm. We do small business work. Sorry, I thought I was just listening today, so I wasn't anticipating to say anything, so you kind of cut me off. Anyway,
it's all good.
I think that's it.
Thank you.
Well, we're still glad you're here, and this is a great way to meet a lot of people across the country doing similar work. So
awesome. Thank you so much.
And Colin, I think I missed you on the first go around.
Yep, I'm Colin Murray. I'm Executive Director for Gain by Local in Madison, Wisconsin. So Wisconsin is well represented in the call today. I like that. Stephanie, we've not met yet, but we should. We like to do a lot of collaboration between Madison and Milwaukee. And I'm also on the board of directors for Amoeba. We've been around for 17 years. I missed the first meeting with Gain by Local. So I'm not one of the founders, but I got in the second meeting and took off from there. And also Ariana, both Jennifer and I have actually been to Bozeman. I don't know if anybody else on the call here has, but we actually had a retreat in actually outside of Bozeman for Amoeba. So we're familiar a little bit with your downtown area.
You mean Jennifer Rockney?
Yep, we know Jennifer.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jennifer and
Oh, nice.
So you're kind of a springboard for us in a lot of ways. And have a beautiful downtown.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, let's see, Rebecca, I think what we'll do is Rebecca's going to introduce herself and just, she's got a few points to cover, and then I've got a few points to cover. And by that point, I think Ed will be joining us, and then we can have a free range discussion after that.
Oh, good. I love free range discussions. Thanks, Jennifer. I'm Rebecca Melançon, and I serve on the board of Amoeba, and I am a co-founder of the Local Business Institute, which is a national nonprofit, also supporting locally owned businesses. But for 20 years, I was a founder and executive director for 10 of those 20 years of the Austin Independent Business Alliance. So it's one of the oldest IBAs in the country, and kind of was a first to strike out doing a lot of the things that we all consider best practices and normal practices now. So I love that the movement has grown so much and has such incredible people involved, such as y'all on the call today. Boards and committees. Wow, that is such a difficult subject to attack, I think. But it's so crucial to all of us because your organization can be crippled by a less than wonderful board and can excel beyond your imagination with a terrific supporting board. So to me, I think the question is, yeah, how do you get one of those terrific supporting boards, right? That's what we're all asking. How do you get from here to there? How many people, can we do just a show of hands? I'd love to see. How many people already have a board that you're happy with? Oh, great. That's an awesome number. How many people don't yet have a board, but are looking to form one? I know there was somebody on the call that was saying, you know, we're going to be forming a board.
Boards I've been with, not happy with at all throughout the whole. I was in charge of membership for a Main Street, and the board is non-active.
Yeah,
just non-active.
I think that's one of the biggest challenges of boards is that it's a volunteer position. You typically want people who are movers and shakers, but that means they're also super busy. So how do you get them on your board and get their attention and get them to commit? There are a couple of points I'd like to make. One is the best thing that you can do is set your board standards and stick by them and have a president who supports them, whatever those standards are. And Jennifer's going to talk to that in a moment, because she's done such an amazing job with her board and saying whatever those standards are, and they can be anything, but what are the expectations? And what happens if those expectations are not met? It's a hard thing to talk about, but I think it's something that's absolutely necessary. And those expectations can be raising money, bringing in members, serving on committees. They can be attending events. You can put whatever you want on them. But when people understand, when they're being asked to be on a board, when they first come in and they are given a nice, layout of what's expected of them, it makes all the difference. And I know from my own experience, and I was on the board of AIBA for 10 years. We didn't do that in the beginning. I mean, it was so crazy. We were in a room of people who wanted to form an organization of some sort. And at that time, over 20 years ago, nobody knew what an IBA really was or what it looked like or what it was supposed to do. And our board recruitment consisted of, hey, who wants to be on the board? That was it. And as you might expect, that first board collapsed in about 4 months, and we had to start all over again. But I think if you set out and set the tone of there are responsibilities of being on a board, then you're much better off. And you also need to set some, it's a chicken and egg thing in a way. You need to set what happens if you don't come to meetings? What happens if you don't volunteer for whatever you're being asked to volunteer for? If nothing happens, then it's much harder to get people to do those things you're asking them to do. The second point that really helped me tremendously was to form committees. And at one time, I had 4 or 5 different committees. I had a membership committee. I had an awards committee because we did an awards program. I had a rapid growth committee that was amazing, and a fundraising committee. And it really helped me to recruit board members from the committees, because 2 things. I had members who were asking, how do I get more involved, or what can I do for the organization? And it's easy to say, bring in more members. That's what we need for everybody to do. But a lot of people want to contribute more. They want to do more. They want to be more involved. And having a committee for them to serve on is just such a great answer to that. The challenge for anybody who's a director is to set the expectations of the committee, recognize that everybody's a volunteer. So managing volunteers is completely different than managing employees. And it has its own set of parameters of finding something that it's within a comfort zone for the volunteer to do. Because if you push them out of their comfort zone, either you're asking them to do something that they don't know how to do or are uncomfortable doing or takes too much time for them to do, they're not going to do it, and it's not going to be a successful relationship. And the worst part about that is then you kind of have a disgruntled member. So it's a little bit of a challenge. Sometimes I just ask them, like if you're on the awards committee, there are meetings every month and then we take the summer off. Does that work for you? What's your forte? And somebody will step forward and say, I have a video company and I would love to work on all the video that you need for that. That's the kind of matchmaking of volunteer to task that leads to a successful relationship. But I also used committees heavily to recruit board members, because in a committee, you really get the chance to see who suits up and shows up, who really does what they say they're going to do, who kind of disappears. It's a great entryway, and you can find good board members that way. I like to pull them through committees first. So those are my, I guess, biggest contributions of use committees. On my committee for membership, I had all B2B businesses, because they all had a personal reason to want to go out and talk to other members as well, because they wanted to recruit them as customers. They want to go out and say, hi, I'm a member of AIBA and you are too. And I wanted to see if there's anything that you need or anything we could do for you. What a great entrance into a business for somebody selling their services. Oh, this is what I do. It's very friendly. It's very community oriented. We have already, we're together in this organization. Just worked really, really well. And the businesses who were participating in that loved it. Sometimes they called on members who had expired and said, hey, I'm a member and I noticed that you didn't renew. Is there anything we can do? Or, what do you need? A lot of times businesses would tell another business owner something that they would probably never tell me, which was also hugely helpful. But it was partnering the B2B businesses with calling on other businesses that made it worth their time. They all got business from it, because the businesses they were calling on wanted to do business with another AIBA member. So it was a personal introduction, and that worked extremely well. So
I'm sorry to interrupt. Could you just repeat what committees you had? I couldn't write fast enough.
Okay, I had a
Thank you.
membership committee. I had an awards committee, because we did an annual awards program. I had a committee that was not ongoing. It went for a year and then stopped. It was its purpose was called a rapid growth committee. And that was to bring in members and money really quickly. And I chose people for that committee that I thought the type of people who can pick up the phone and get you a $5,000 donation, or could give it to you themselves. I only had 4 people on that committee, but they were amazing. I didn't ask them to just generally raise funds. It was usually, I have this sponsorship left, can you all sell it? And they would every single time find me a sponsor of the level I needed. I tried to have a general fundraising committee. It didn't work very well. They needed more direction than I gave them. And it's easier to get people to donate or buy a partnership or sponsorship if there's a focus. And that one didn't have a good enough focus, which is my fault. It's my responsibility. And I didn't do that one. It seems like I'm trying to think, we had one more and now I can't remember what it was. But I would sometimes look at forming, when I saw something that needed to be done. We did have a marketing committee for a while. That one was really hard because all the marketing companies wanted to be on it, which was fabulous. But they all had very different ideas about where to go with the organization. So it was a little of an unruly direction to try and get it to focus. But they did do quite a bit for the organization. So I looked at need first. Like, what do you need? Form a committee.
Thank you.
Well, I'm going to add a few thoughts onto Rebecca's, and then we can also have, obviously questions and such before Ed gets here or after. I have we ended up kind of focusing on 4 pillars. So we have our board, we have advocacy, we have membership engagement, which under that falls a couple of subcommittees, events, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. We also have a consumer education committee, which formerly was marketing, but we really wanted to kind of focus in on, that consumer education as well. And we also have capacity and infrastructure. So all the sexy things like making an employee handbook and stuff like that. I think a game changer for us, and I see Ed is coming onto the call. So Ed, I'm wrapping up a couple of thoughts here, and then we'll kind of have you give our larger scope view. A huge game changer for us, and it's appropriate that Ed is just joining us now, is to have an outside consultant come in to help us do a strategic plan. So, you have this group of people together, and it's very easy to get down into the weeds. And I think it was a game changer for us. And I wish that we had started doing it earlier. And I know that it can be very expensive sometimes, but there are community resources a lot of times, like the Center for Nonprofit Excellence, which Ed is joining us from today. And we think that, or I think that it really helped unify people in a way where I didn't have to tell them. It's like, look, the expert says so too. So, and it also helped me gain perspective as well. So that is one of my biggest tips there. Of course, now that assumes that you do have a board functioning. As Rebecca said, setting the clear expectations is a huge deal. And I would much rather have a board of 3 people that meet those expectations than a board of 13 that does not, because the board of 13 that does not, it's a waste of my time, and I don't have much time, as none of you do. So I spend a lot of time chasing and all that good stuff, and it's just it's pointless to have a large board where there's not a lot of functioning members. I won't say that every board I've had has always been full speed. There's always 1 or 2, it seems like, that's never quite up there with everybody else, but to have that core that you can rely on makes a big difference. And the less you have the time wasters, the better. So I think that's another good reason to have those expectations, is to really focus your time in on where it's going to be most effective. I think that with the board, as well as with the committees, I do try to make an effort to be sure that everyone has some sort of contribution to that. I think that committees, if they go and they show up to some meetings and it's like 3 meetings in and they still haven't said but 1 sentence, there needs to be something else going on there. Like they need to, there needs to be a way for them to plug in better, or a way for, whether it's us, making sure that their voice is heard, or just, kind of drawing them in to get them engaged. People aren't going to stay on something where they feel like they're not making a contribution. And that's part of the expectations as well, is, that it's a quid pro quo type of thing. We want you to be on here as long as you're contributing, and you don't want to waste your time on a committee where you're not contributing. So I feel like, those 2 things are important to kind of have in mind as meetings are conducted, etc. So Rebecca also mentioned, everyone's unique talents and connections. Everybody has something, even if it's just people they can introduce you to. So that's important as well, to kind of have that discovery process, especially with board members and committee members as well, to see where their sweet spot is and where they can really be helpful and really feel engaged as well. We have made more of an effort over the past couple of years to be sure that not only our board, but also our committees are representing a diversity of people. And that's, type of business, geography, where it is in Louisville, obviously race, etc., men and women, to kind of feel like we have, more voices on those committees. We realized that our events committee was just a bunch of us white ladies, planning our events. And it was a major hole for us. So we needed to be sure that we were having a diversity of voices speak in that area, especially. So just a couple last things to add: regular communications with the committees. And that is something that honestly needs staff attention to me. I love to have a strong chair on a committee that, will get the notes out and will, keep people engaged and all that sort of thing. But, you know, a committee that just goes silent and then every 3 months is like, oh, let's have a meeting next week. You know, there always has to be kind of that continuing plan of what are we doing next? You know, even if it's 3 months from now, you know, like, yes, we're taking a break for the summer or we're doing whatever, but we do know what we're going to move forward with on these committees. Obviously the board meets every month and that's a different story, but we kind of got started with committees and then stopped with committees and got started with committees and then stopped with committees. And I feel like we finally have these kind of established committees that have been going for, you know, 4 or 5 years, some a little longer, some a little shorter, but I feel like we've gotten into a rhythm of, you know, where does staff need to be involved and where should staff, you know, harness this energy and this involvement from the committee and the board. So, and lastly, just when you notice that a person is off track, you know, like, why are they not coming to meetings anymore? Or, you know, what's going on? Like, a reach out from staff, I think, is helpful to let them know that they are missed, for one thing. And, you know, maybe there is just a difficult time right now or an extraordinarily busy time. Or if it's something that's long-term, then again, you don't want to waste their time. I don't want them to waste mine. So it's time to, I call it the come to Jesus talk, you know. Let's be realistic about what you're going to be able to do. And that helps both of us. And not in a judgmental way, you know, you don't want to be like, well, why not? And you said you would and blah, blah, blah. You know, I think that everybody in their hearts, you know, wants to help, but we want to be sure that it's something that's going to be a fit for both of us and realistic for both of us to continue on and be productive, you know. So with that, I'm going to welcome Ed. I have been speaking here for like 8 minutes, I think. So Ed, do you want to take a brief introduction, and then maybe do you want to have a few questions before you jump in, or would you like to jump in and save questions for later? Or?
Whatever your pleasure is, Jennifer. I can lead off and then follow with follow-up questions. What would be most helpful right now?
Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, and then we'll see if anybody has burning questions that we need to ask now, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. So my name's Ed Cordes. I direct the consulting services at the Center for Nonprofit Excellence in Louisville. And we were created 20 years ago to serve the nonprofit community, both offering learning opportunities from leadership development down to, you know, how to effectively use Excel and everything in between. And then we also do consulting, focusing mostly on strategic planning and board development, and some areas around the edges there. We also are increasingly getting more involved in bringing members of the nonprofit community together to strengthen our voice, to advocate for the sector, and also members of corporate and government sectors as well, to interact more with the nonprofit sector and trying to be a hub for that activity as well. So that's a little bit. What else do you folks need to know, Jennifer?
And you guys are a wonderful resource, and I'm very glad that Louisville has this in our community for sure. I've utilized the Center for Nonprofit Excellence and previous nonprofit work as well as LIBA, and just has been a wonderful resource to call on and that sort of thing. I know that not every community has that, but look for it. If you don't know about it, take a look around. You never know. Does anybody have burning questions that we should answer now before we jump into Ed's kind of mini presentation or mini talk? Awesome. All right, well, Ed, go ahead, Kathleen, sorry.
I do have one question, and Ed, maybe you're going to jump into this already, but it pertains, I guess, Jennifer, to what you've already spoken about with kind of when you're in that midpoint, like a committee exists already, someone maybe has stepped away, or you're looking to shift things, diversity on a program committee, all sorts of things around that. We uniquely are kind of at that stage too, where we're looking at our committee. We've had some shifts and change as far as engagement. Some businesses have closed. That means their individual committee members stepped away, you know, a number of those pieces. We're looking to kind of recenter, refocus, and taking some steps toward getting like a shared document of responsibilities and particular focuses, like helping onboard people so they understand what they're committing to. I wonder if folks have experience around that. If you do, again, Ed, maybe you're going to speak toward that, but that's kind of one niche I'm wondering if folks have experience with, like what do you do when you're in the middle and you want to move toward the new just like the new generation or the new
Sure.
new phase of your committee.
Quick question for you too. Do you guys have a strategic plan, or do you work with,
We do, yeah. We have a partnership with a local organization that's helping us restructure some things internally. So there's support there for the organization and for our board specifically. The program committee that we have is a little bit more adjacent to some of that planning. So it's certainly something we can bring into the fold, but just curious what experience has existed out there.
Sure.
We one time redid a committee and it just wasn't working. And I think part of that was probably my lack of direction in it. But what I found was that when I went to the committee meeting and I said, okay, we think what we'd like to do is refocus what we're doing. And I had a whole plan laid out and how we were going to do it. It was wonderful because it really divided people. The people who had been incredibly committed, but a little frustrated, were super excited that there was a better plan and they jumped on board. And there were a couple of people who decided that it was time, and not in a negative way, but just saw it as a nice exit time. So they would say, you know, I think this is awesome and glad to see you guys moving forward. I don't have the time I thought I had, and I'm going to take this opportunity to step off. So it really worked out spectacularly well. And, you know, for those people, I said, well, thank you so much for all the time you've given us. And they were very careful to say, if there's something of a limited capacity that we could do in the future, we're in, but we just don't have the time for this. So just walking in and saying, you know, here's our new plan and let's move forward in this direction made a big difference.
And I was going to see if you had thoughts on that too.
Me?
Mm-hmm.
No, I actually think that's it. But what Rebecca said makes a lot of sense. You know, my mantra is always form follows function, right? So instead of trying to figure out what the committee should be doing, let's go back to instead of trying to figure out who should be on the committee and stuff like that, what do we need the committee to be? So if you have a strategic plan, you know, what is the committee support that you need to pull that plan off? What do those committees look like? Have committee specific committee charters. You know, this is what this committee does. And then look at the committee and say, in order to pull off this charter, who needs to be on there? What kind of talent and expertise networking do we need to pull off this role for the committee? Also, it really helps to have an annual plan for a committee as well, right? So I know what they're lined up to do. And then, as Rebecca said, this affords all sorts of opportunities for folks to sign up again or say, this just isn't my season. And I think sometimes, and maybe this has been your experience too, and Rebecca alluded to it, sometimes people are just looking for permission to move on. They love the work. They don't want to let you down. They said they could do it. It's just not working out for them, but they can't bring themselves to quit. And sometimes just providing them, you know, the opportunity to, in a reset like this, it happens a lot like Rebecca just explained. So that's how I would think about it. I think if we approach it as our committees are problems to be solved, it becomes personal and weird and strange. I think if you link it to a broader vision, lift our gaze a little bit and sort of recast these roles and then say, well, who do we need to make that happen? I think that gives people permission to dream and also to self-select. I'm all over this now. I get it. You know, this really isn't for me at this point.
You know, I'd like to share just one story. The first year I formed an awards committee when we started our Armadillo Awards in Austin. I asked people to commit for a year. So I give them a time frame. And we did the awards. And so when it came to the end of that first year, at our committee meeting, I said, well, I really appreciate all of you committing to a year. We've put on a very successful program, blah, 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 blah. And thank you so much. I appreciate your commitment. And they all sat there and looked at me and said, wait, we have to get off the committee. And I said, no, you don't. You can stay on it, but I want to be respectful of people who committed. You committed to a year, not 10 years, not a lifetime. but a year. And to a person, they all wanted to stay on, and they were just like, but we don't want to leave. Now we know what we're doing. We want to do it again. And having that little reset button, I think is really helpful too, to say, yes, you can stay on, but you committed for a year and you've served your time, and now you can leave. Really helps a lot of people, like you say, at just that permission to leave sort of place. And it makes it not awkward. It makes it perfectly acceptable. And you're not judging them. You're saying, thank you. We appreciate your time and attention.
You know, I don't know if this would fit with the models of your different organizations. I noticed Pat's in the chat said they're required to have some committees and stuff. But some organizations actually, you know, take the beginning of the fiscal year and just disband everything and say, okay, given what's in front of us in the next year, what committees do we need? And they may bring some on. They may say this isn't needed anymore. And they really just use it as an opportunity to rethink the whole committee structure. That works for some organizations, or maybe you do that every 2 years or something like that. But there has to be something intentional about keeping the purpose and the plan of the committee alive to really drive good committee function. And good committees, as you know, good committees just free up the board to do much more other more strategic, visionary, generative thinking, right? You're not bogged down in the day-to-day if you've got good committees that are supporting the work.
Do you want to go ahead and cover some of the points that you were outlining today for us, Ed?
Sure. So I presented, you know, so now that you know how this stuff really works, I'll give you the theory. And stop me if you've got questions, please. So there's a classic way to think about board. There's a classic way of thinking about what a board member's role is, and they call them the three duties, right? The duty of care, the duty of loyalty, and the duty of obedience. Duty of care is like anything. You're paying attention to what's going on. If you care about something, you're paying attention. So you're reading board materials and you're doing all that. You're participating in discussions. You're making good decisions. The duty of loyalty is that when they're acting as a board, that is their first concern. No conflicts. When they walk out, even if they disagreed, when you walk out of that board meeting, it's as if you were in the majority. No bad mouthing about the board's decision or the organization. You are required to be loyal as a board member to the organization. If you can't abide by it, then there's other avenues. Finally, the duty of obedience. I love this one, the duty of obedience. Certainly you got to follow laws and regulations and stuff like that.
Not mine, for sure.
But this is really about the mission of the organization. The board member and the board itself is obedient to the mission of the organization, which means that it makes, when you think about this, the mission is telling the community what its role is in your community, and people are giving you resources to do that. So it's incumbent upon the board to be obedient to that mission. It's the expectation of the corporation. And this is usually not a problem until somebody dangles some money out to the side and says, maybe if you took this on, we might be able to find 100,000 for you or something. Excuse me. Then all of a sudden it's, oh, what was our mission again? Does this fit in that? That actually happened to me in a startup organization. And of course it fit. Oh, what are you talking about? It's $300,000. So, you know, care, loyalty, and obedience, that's sort of the framework. So what does that look like on the ground? And so things come in sevens, right? Things come in sevens. So here's seven ways to go forward with this. One is, and all this really centers around a high functioning board is really at that strategic visionary level. You've got staff that are worried about operation. You hire staff to worry about operations. A high functioning board is really thinking longer term, that strategic arc, right? So does the board, one of the responsibilities the board has is to have a clear vision of the community in mind. What are we anchoring our work to? what do we want to see in our community, and make sure that that's articulated well. It helps you identify partners who share the same vision. It also anchors the mission. You know, this is what we're working toward as we think about our work and our governance and our strategy. This is what we're working toward. You know, people tend to look at vision, mission statements, values as, you know, it's all rainbows and unicorns. You know, it's aspirational, it's marketing devices, it's taglines, it's got to look good on the website. I think good vision, particularly vision, mission statements, are hard work, and they're used assiduously in decision making and the like. So the board is, and that is the board's responsibility to set that. Of course, you know, a lot of boards know they hire their executives and CEOs. Some boards even support them after they hire them in their work. And even fewer actually evaluate them, actually give them feedback every year about, you know, how's it going, you know, and where we think it's going. But the board is only responsible for one employee, and that is the ED. The ED is responsible for building out the staff and the like. So it shouldn't be that hard, but a lot of boards just don't take that seriously. You talked a lot about strategic plans already. I can't say enough about that. Yes, the world is a fast-paced, things are changing all the time. Like Mike Tyson, the boxer, said, yeah, everybody's got a plan till the first time they're punched in the face. Yes, yes, yes. That's all true, and have a plan anyway, so that when things change, you're making intentional decisions. And that longer strategic arc, that is where the board pays attention, not at the operational carrying out of that, but that is where you want to give your board something to do and be engaged at. Make sure you've got a good strategy that they're paying attention to, that they're bought into, that they helped create.
And I'm going to add that I'm going to copy and paste this into the text after you've gone through them too. So, I mean, take notes too, but you'll also be able to get it from the,
Sure.
the chat in a minute here.
And of course, the boards have to ensure that the organization has resources. That's the sneaky way of saying fundraising. I don't know how that works, but this is probably the thing boards worry about the most and don't do as well. And I will just say, it can't get around it. Boards have to ensure the financial sustainability of an organization. And the easiest, so yes, they should be giving to the organization. They should have to oversee a fundraising or resource development plan, revenue plan of some sort. But they also need to take part in it in some way. And the ways we found most effective is to have a menu of options that play to board members' strengths, so that people can participate in some way. Not everybody can do everything. Have a menu that ensures people can participate in some way. So we talked about having the strategy. The board really needs a sort of a dashboard of metrics at that strategic level that they're tracking, to make sure that that's their work. If you don't give them something to track at the strategic level, they will find something else to track and pay attention to. And sometimes that's down in the operational level where you just don't want them, right? You've got that, but you know, your board needs this sort of, you know, and it's linked to vision, it's linked to strategy. You know, what is the impact of the community as a result of our work? Not how many people attended this, or how you know, down in that sort of operational level. So a dashboard, 5 things that will help the board realize that we're moving toward our vision at that strategic level. That's really I think clever. And you know, if you don't have a dashboard, just make some stuff up right now and work with it, and just live into an effective dashboard. Of course, the board has to be concerned with maintaining the integrity of the organization, right? So to make sure that you know, legally, morally, ethically, you're all functioning at that level. That's the board's responsibility, as well as staff. If it's not, you know, and something egregious happens and the community becomes aware, and this happened with a well-known university in our community not too many years ago, where some of the goings on were questioned. And after the initial sort of, talk about the president and the university, stuff like that, the question that came right behind it was, where the heck was the board when all this was going on, right? The board is responsible to the community for the actions of the nonprofit. So it is obviously the board's responsibility to make sure that the organization is functioning legally, ethically, morally, within a set of core values, right? The board is operating with it. We make these core values, we laminate them, we put them on bookmarks, we make nice plaques, and we put them in our entryways, but they really are a tool for the board to measure how well, how the organization is acting in terms of integrity. Of course, provide fiscal oversight, and of course, avoid conflicts of interest among board members. And finally, there's the manage and the renew part. You all know about the manage part, right? Conduct productive meetings, implement effective committee structure. We just talked about that. Enforce term limits, ensure diversity and inclusion. All those things that make a board run well. I suspect you've been talking mostly about that today. But also, I think it's really helpful for the board to take time to step back and regenerate, both in an informal way. Our board gets together periodically and over adult beverages and hors d'oeuvres, just to get to know one another. It's important for board members to do that. The other part of it, it's great to take a retreat at least once every 2 years, and just step back and take the broader view. What are we trying to do here? To reflect on, the individual members can reflect on, there's lots of ways to participate in the community. Why am I choosing this way? Again, the board retreat is sometimes not, is either too businessy or just not done because they think there isn't enough substance. And I think there's a middle ground there where a board can step back and just think generatively. You've got this vision out there. What are some creative ways that we can make that happen? Think way outside the box. And just spend some time. When I've been on boards, that's the fun stuff. That's the stuff that keeps me engaged. It feeds my passion. And I'm sitting around with people who share that passion and think, have these same values. So taking the time to do that can make these other things really happen, flourish. Okay. I hope that was helpful.
Oh, yes.
Yes, we agree. We were so glad to see each other in person after COVID. We are used to having at least one time during the year where we can see each other in person. Admittedly, things have changed from early summer, but early summer we took that opportunity to get together and connect as a board. And honestly, some people I'd never met in person that were on my board.
CNPE's board just did the same thing.
There you go.
Like almost half the board was new.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, I want to open it up to questions from folks.
I have a question about board term limits. Technically, our board has terms of 2 years, but we don't enforce any term limits. And we've transitioned from a working board to an organization with full-time staff. And it's kind of created this dynamic where it's hard to reevaluate our strategic direction with some of these long-standing board members that are holding on to that past structure. So I don't know if term limits are things that typically are enforced or included in a board policy, kind of what everyone's experience has been.
Well, I can give you a bad experience. When we had at AIBA, we had no term limits. And there were people who were on the board for 15, 16, 17 years. And it made it so that I could never make a successful change anywhere, because just like you're saying, they were kind of stuck in what the status quo was and saw no reason to make it better. They were too comfortable. And I'm sorry to say it's something I never overcame. I overcame it by starting committees that helped me do the things that I needed to do because my board wouldn't and wasn't going to. So not much of a help, but a kindred
No,
spirit.
that is helpful. One other thing to mention is we just had a strategic plan, and we have a small committee dedicated to reevaluating our board processes, which we're then going to bring to the executive committee to try to get approved. The issue is the executive committee is run by all these long-standing members that are adverse to change. So we have an opportunity, if we can point to literature or other examples of why board limits are potentially important, but I just don't know if that's just my personal feeling or if that's the reality.
Maybe Ed can help you out there.
Yeah, no, it's best practice. It is absolutely best practice for all the reasons that you just said, right? To rejuvenate, to eliminate groupthink, to kind of shake up in a good way, shake up the organization at the governance level. Typically, they're enshrined in the bylaws. You can serve like two or 3 year terms, renew once, and then you have to sit out a year before you can be asked again. A good governance committee that is paying attention to the care and feeding of the board, that could bring this best practice to the attention of the board itself would be helpful. But if it's in your bylaws in some way, now I don't know if term limits are, you said terms are, but I don't know if term limits are. If it's in your bylaws, you got to follow your bylaws. And it's never not following the bylaws is never a problem until it's a problem, right? So that is a legal document that is governing your organization. So follow that. The other thing too is find ways for people to scoot off the board to still stay involved, right? So it might be through committee work. It might be in an emeritus non-voting status. Find a place where they're still feel the value, can still benefit from their wisdom. Be really careful about forming an advisory board, because advisory boards, they have this strange way of expecting you will follow their advice. So I wouldn't even call it an advisory board. I would call it something else, but make it very clear what they do and what they don't do in their relationship to governance. Or I'm working with an organization right now, and it is a huge headache to try to back out of that mess. So absolutely, there's lots of good reasons. I can send out, I can see if I can find, you mentioned literature, Lauren. I can see if I can find just a, not an academic treatise on this, but like a good handout that explains why that's important. And I can send it to Jennifer and she can disseminate it. How about that?
Thank you so much. This has been very helpful.
And Pat, looks like you got.
Yeah, we just had our organization committee where we discussed that because somebody just left the board that had been on it since the group was founded in 20 years ago. The thing is that we have certain businesses like my bookstore and the antique center and the Holidays Florist. We've been active on the board because we're kind of the people that help the other people that are part of BIFTA. We're actually doing advertising at the Welcome Center because we can afford to do that, whereas the other businesses can't, to try to bring people downtown. So, and we kind of organize all of the events. We're perfectly willing to have other people raise their hands, but we don't seem to have other people that want to do the work. And that will consistently, like when we do Ladies' Night, the second Friday in December, we're the ones that are open. The other guys aren't always open. And we can't help it if we have pre-COVID 70 or 80 people wandering around our businesses. We would like to have those people want to go to all the businesses, but we can't force somebody to stay open on a special event night. So it is hard because we're a small organization. We only have about 30 or 40 members. And technically, you're looking at what is the designated downtown behind me. It's not very big. And I've spread it out through to our neighboring communities through our Shop Local program to try to get some new people involved, which has helped. Get new people involved for prizes, for events and stuff like that. But it is hard trying to get people to volunteer. They don't want to do it.
Great. Well, I think, and we have not instituted term limits at LIBA, although we have talked about it off and on. It's just, we've been lucky that so far it hasn't been a problem, I guess. And that's why it hasn't been, you know, put into our bylaws. People do roll off. And honestly, it is pretty scary to me when they do, people that have been there for a long time that have been my rocks. But then I find that it usually works out. So it's a mixed bag. I do want to recognize that it is 2 o'clock. Ed, I don't know how long you can stay with us. I would love to be able to answer a couple more questions if we can, but we will see. I think Wolf has his hand raised.
Well, I have more of a comment. It also depends on what kind of organization you have. And in Tennessee, you have to declare when you form a new organization, whether you're a membership organization or not. And if you're not, then of course, who elects the board and stuff, which makes it more difficult as term limits. But I think one of the reasons why some have people who stay on for a long time is because they are sort of ensuring that the Constitution is followed or something. And actually, a Constitution can actually ensure that, because it's harder to change the Constitution than the bylaws. So if you have a charter that specifies what the main activities or mission of the organization is, then you don't really need to have people on the board that kind of remember and ensure that, because you can always point back to that. And another thing is, if you have like museums and stuff, some of them have to have a board where certain people from the community need to be on there because they have the money. And, you know, it's almost the survival thing of having some people stay on for decades.
You know, again, form follows function, right? So to your point, Wolf, what is the, what sort of governance structure do we need that's going to advance our mission? And arts groups are really a different animal, right? That's where you have boards, and then you have, the boards could be many folks for the reasons you said, and you have an executive committee that really sort of does the governance work, right? So I think just trying to keep in mind what we're trying to do with governance of the organization and making sure we have the structures in place that will allow that to happen. That's the primary thing. And these other things like term limits, like ex officio positions, and executive committees work versus the entire board's work. There's what can we assemble that will help us carry out our mission? That's the key point. And then just being clear and consistent.
Thanks, Ed. I'm just dropping my contact information in here again for folks that may have came on late. Because if you do have other questions, obviously we're happy to still continue to help and get you connected to whoever you need to be as well. So other questions, other things that may or may not be something to address? I will tell you that it is an ongoing process as well. And at least for me, I mean, when we started, well, for one thing, we started with like a retreat that was like 2 hours long, and then we didn't really follow the plan, and then we kind of expanded, and then, we really have continued to grow as an organization. So it also gives me, confidence for the future as well, because there are things that we're still incorporating in committee structure. I don't think anybody ever reaches the golden perfect, here's exactly how we do it kind of thing, because times change. So
and there's life cycles too, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so the board, you may have a perfect board now. The fundamental problem with boards is they're actually composed of individual people. If we could get around that somehow, they would function much more easily. So your board, you'll have great boards and you'll think this is great, and then something happens and all of a sudden, right? So be patient, roll with it, and just try to keep keep the broader strategy and governance in mind.
Absolutely. Well, Ariana, I think you have one more question here. If we can get to that before we close up today.
Yes, thank you. One of the boards that I'm on has been wanting to do more board education on proper governance and all of that. And I was wondering what your recommendations were for how often boards should do that, and any resources that you might be able to point us to for maybe a person or an organization that could do some of that training.
So where are you located, Ariana?
The board that I'm referring to is the Pacific Northwest Booksellers Association. So the organization is incorporated in Washington, but headquarters are in Oregon, and members are in all the Pacific Northwest states. Virtual trainings are fine, but we can also do in-person trainings when we have board meetings and retreats.
Sure. So you're a little bit out of our reach, so I don't know that I could recommend us. But if you check BoardSource is, they have consultants as well as materials that could be really helpful with that. And I would make certain, I would make regular sort of reminder of best practice, something like we've done today. Maybe just sort of part of an annual retreat or an annual meeting. Particularly when you bring new board members on, that's a great time, right? If you bring new board members on at a particular time, at that meeting where they're introduced and maybe just a brief presentation about, some of the things we've talked about today. I think that's a natural time to do it. Forming a governance committee that will be paying attention to the board, how it's functioning and where it might need some help, and then bring in some resources periodically to address those. I think that's a good approach as well. But and you can just, you can do a 5 to 10 minute thing at every board meeting. I've seen that too, where it might be about any one of these topics. Remember, our fundraising responsibilities, or remember, how do we think strategically? Are we doing that? And while I'm on the topic, setting aside at every board meeting, if possible, or periodically throughout the year, time to do generative thinking, creative thinking, besides the business work, I think is really, really helpful as well in keeping people engaged. So I don't know if that's helpful or not. Check out BoardSource.
Yeah, thank you. That's very helpful. We've been wanting to do it annually, especially when we do bring on new board members, for at least the basics. But then we've also been wanting to make sure that, we're developing our knowledge and our skills and strategies so that we are being the most effective board, but without ever overstepping our bounds, and always, keeping our proper relationship with our ED and everything. And sometimes it can be really easy, I think, sometimes to overstep that. So reminding people this is the proper way a board works.
Absolutely. And you're doing that. And if you have a strategic plan, and if you are reminding the board to function at that strategic level of governance, and you're doing generative thinking and the like, you are building a culture, then that's how this board operates. And you'll find less and less reminder is necessary as you go on. It becomes part of how you do things.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I've appreciated today.
And we are lucky CNP actually runs an annual board boot camp where you can send folks in to get their education on, it's a nice, not just your organization, but, general best practices and all that good stuff. So there might be ways to join forces, with every year, lots of nonprofits on board, brand new board members. So that might be a resource too. So Rebecca let me know, she said to say thanks everyone, but she's got to jump on another Zoom meeting. So she's going to see us next month, and I'm going to drop here in the chat our next local leaders roundtable, which is October the 14th. What's new with Amoeba? We're shifting into the holidays. I don't know if y'all felt that change in the air on September the 1st when everybody's like, whoop, holidays, So we'll be chatting about that next month. And I want to really thank you, Ed, so much for taking some time here to be with us today, and have really valued my membership with CMPE, and just and love that you guys are in the community for sure. So
Well, thank you so much. I'll bring that back to the home office once we get one again.
Awesome. Well, cool. Well, thanks everyone for being here today. And my contact information is in the chat. If you need anything else, please feel free to holler. And Ed, I will also pass your information, your worksheet along to Lauren as well. So we'll get you all connected.
All right.
Thanks everyone, and best wishes with boards and committees. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Goodbye now.